So today we're going to focus on exercise 12 from chapter 3. This prompt asks us to draw a clock face comprised of both a little hash mark and then a turtle stamped out. Let's look at our code. This was the result. I'll close idle. The first line in our code tells us to import turtle, then we set up the screen. Next part of the code is pretty standard. We assign George to a turtle. George is set with a pen size, a color, and because for most of this particular exercise, the turtle's path is not shown, we're going to start with the pen up. We're also going to set the George's shape to turtle. Next part focuses on our function. The two distinct part of our functions is our string, which describes what happens. T moves out length distance and then leaves a stamp number of times in a circle. Because I set this up to allow for variable number of turtles around the circle, we have turtle, which we'll set up to be George length, the distance it moves out from the center, and then stamp number is the number of stamps around the circle. Let's look at our loop. Our loop will run from 1 to stamp number plus 1. That's because when a range is set, it will always run to the final value assigned minus 1. So that's why we have this plus 1 here. How we are going to create the shape is that the turtle is going to start facing this way. It's going to go forward a certain length. It's going to put the pen down, draw this little line, which we're assigning this distance. Then it's going to pick up the pen, and it's going to go forward just a little bit and then mark its stamp. Then it's going to pick up, it's not going to need to pick up its pen because the pen's already up, sorry. And then it's going to move back this exact distance and then backward all the way to the center in the amount of length distance. Then it's going to turn itself in proportion to the number of stamps it makes around the circle. So if our stamp is number 2, then it would go 360 divided by 2. It would only make 2 stops around the circle. It would turn 180 degrees. Let's run the module and then talk about the details. So we're going to name our function. We're going to call out that we want our T to be assigned to George, that the length we want it to move out from the center is 100, and we want it to make 12 stamps around the circle. Perfect. So notice the name of the game here was the turtle moving out, putting the stamp, coming back, shifting its orientation, and then repeating that cycle over and over and over. I would think what's interesting is that another way this could be solved is to start here and then rotate around the circle this way, leaving stamps, and then coming back and rotating and leaving marks. I feel like that's a much more difficult approach. By having the turtle repeat the same action each time as it's moved out in the correct orientation, we're able to create the most seamless clock face. Let's look back at our data. We're going to rerun this now just to show how the variable shape number here, it's now set to 6, will affect the run. So you see here, as we adjust shape number, not only does that adjust the number of turtles stamped out, it also affects the angle between each turtle. We want it to be evenly spaced around the clock face. Okay, so last little bit to look at here. It's kind of nuanced in my text. So I chose the T forward to be length divided by stamp number. That's because that's 100 divided by 12, which is just kind of an incremental step to lay down some ink before it's then picked up and then moves forward. Also, I picked kind of an arbitrary amount here, 2 times the length divided by stamp number. And then it's going to move backwards that entire amount. So you move forward length number divided by stamp number plus 2 times length number divided by stamp number. That's 3 times length number total that it moved forward, that it would then need to move back before moving back length to be back at the center. Why I chose this value for it to move forward is because proportionally you're always going to be moving out 100 or 200, and the number of stamp turtles won't be 700 stamps. It won't read as a clock face. You're always going to stamp out 10, 20 turtles. It's not going to be a huge amount, but I wanted to keep them proportional to one another. So that's why that length feels a little bit arbitrary, but it's really about a ratio between the two of them, as opposed to setting this at 7, which also works. But the code would break a bit if your length was, let's say, 500 or 1,000. It would not work as well. So let's run the module. See, we get a similar result when that's set to 7. So let's rerun it again, but now let's set the length equal to 300. This might be a little bit far out for our turtle. Ooh. So now you see our dashes are pretty long compared to our turtle. I'm going to stop the turtle here because we get the idea. Where here in the original function, the dashed line was in proportion to the turtle, much smaller. Hence, the best thing that we can do is set length and stamp number to be somewhat proportional. So let's put that back in our code. Rerun it a final time so it just matches. Oh, sorry. Again, and then setting our length back to the correct amount. So that's how you create a clock face. Again, this is chapter 3, exercise 12. Thank you so much.